Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to NJLA's YouTube channel for another Read Aloud. We are so delighted to have you here again with us this morning. I am Shalonda Archibald, NJLA board member, and today I'm going to read to you the book Spotted Tail by David Hesketh Wombley-Whedon. I am so excited to read another Raycraft book collection to you all. This particular book is a biography. So we're going to do something a little bit different today. I've prepared a presentation of information that I want to share before we get into the reading. This particular reading will be done in two parts. Because it is a biography, there is a lot of information and it's a little lengthy. So I'll read some parts today and then some parts at another time next week. So let's get into our instructional portion of our read aloud. So the genre for Spotted Tail, as I mentioned in the introduction, is a biography. So biographies describe the life of one person. In this particular text, it's Spotted Tail. It includes factual information and information from reliable sources. Biographers, which are people who write biographies, they do lots of research to learn as much as they can about the subject of their text as possible so that they can give readers the most clear picture of what that person's life was like at that time. Biographies help readers understand places, times, events, and other people connected to that time period. And biographies are usually told in chronological order. So Spotted Tail has 5 sections. It begins with an introduction, which summarizes pretty much what the author wanted to cover about Spotted Tail's life. And then it moves into his early life, which for this text begins when Spotted Tail is about 12 years old. And then from early life, we go into a section titled Warrior. And in Warrior, it talks about some battles that Spotted Tail fought and won and fought and lost. And then we move into his family life, where it talks about Spotted Tail's children, their education, his relationship with them. And finally, the book ends with a section titled Chief, which explains Spotted Tail's time as the leader of this Sechungu Lakotas. So that's a little bit about the genre. So our reading skill for today, we're going to focus on skimming. Because biographies are presenting factual information, readers don't always want to read from cover to cover. Some texts you just want to get the big picture or the main point. You just want to locate some specific information or review a text that's been previously read. So we're going to skim, meaning read through the text quickly, only focusing on certain sections, just so that we can get some general information about Spotted Tail that may kind of spark our curiosity about him, and we'll go on maybe to do some further research of our own by watching, YouTube videos or reading additional text about it or researching online about Spotted Tail. So for today, our vocabulary focus is going to be on our very own words. Our very own words is a personal collection of words of our choosing. Words that we've identified hold some meaning for us. And that could be words that you like how they sound when they're pronounced. You might like the way these words look when they're written. You might like the way this group of words sound when they're read together. I remember when I was in 5th grade, maybe 4th grade, one of my very own words, meaning a word that became part of my personal collection that I wanted to use in everything that I wrote, whenever I spoke, was the word peculiar. Peculiar means strange or odd. Peculiar. Peculiar. It was my favorite word and I owned it. So while you're listening to me read, I want for you to, on an index card, a sheet of paper, maybe in a notebook, just keep a list of words that you want to own, that are yours, that for you have held some space in your mind of importance. Okay? Okay. So every day during our features, we've been presenting you with some affirmations or words of encouragement. So in reading Spotted Tail, in preparation for this reading, I couldn't decide which affirmation I wanted. So I am going to present both of my choices. And next week at the end of the reading, I'd like to hear which affirmation you feel best is fitting to Spotted Tail's life. So the first one is, I stand up for what I believe in. I stand up for what I believe in. So in the book, you're going to find that Spotted Tail was faced with challenges that forced him to make some hard decisions. And he had to stand up for what he believed in. But at the same time, he also faced situations that required for him to be courageous and to act confidently. So the second affirmation is, I have courage and confidence. And so the choices, and we'll decide next week for affirmations fitting to Spotted Tail. I stand up for what I believe in. I have courage and confidence. Okay? So next week, you'll let me know your thoughts about which affirmation best fits Spotted Tail. Because they both fit, I just was not able to choose which was the best fit. So I'm going to need you all to help me do that, okay? Great. So let's get into the reading of Spotted Tail. Introduction. Native Americans were the first people in North America. They lived and prospered here for thousands of years. Today, there are millions of American Indians living and working in the United States and Canada. Maybe a classmate or friend is Native American. Maybe you are. Meet Chief Spotted Tail, the great leader of the Sishungu Lakota people. Spotted Tail was born almost 200 years ago, and he helped lead the Lakota Nation during times of war. Chief Spotted Tail was not only a great warrior, but he was one of the first American Indian leaders to argue for peace between the United States and Native Americans. He was also a great believer in education as the best way to improve the lives of American Indians. Today, there's a university named after him on the Rosebud Indian Reservation, and his life is an inspiration to all Americans. Early years. The buffalo herd raced across the plains, kicking up clouds of dust and soil. There were hundreds of them, all running at full speed away from the hunters. The sound of their hooves echoed like giants stomping across the land. Young Spotted Tail looked over at his father, who sat atop his favorite horse. This was the first time Spotted Tail had been allowed to join the hunters, and he wanted to make sure he didn't make any mistakes. Let's talk about something here for a minute. Have any of you, when you chose to do something for the first time, wanted to get it done perfectly, to not make any mistakes? Yesterday, Dr. Ken shared with us how he plays the saxophone, and he played during his read aloud the saxophone. I'm quite sure when he first learned and he had his first performance that he wanted to not make any mistakes as well. Why do we do that though? When we're doing something for the first time, especially when there's others who are going to be watching us, why do we try really hard to get it perfect? Think about that. Why do we not want to make any mistakes? Think about that. Tell someone next to you why you think that's so. We want to impress others. We want to impress ourselves. We want to do a good job. Yeah, those are all pretty good responses. Why do you think Spotted Tail didn't want to make any mistakes? Okay. I like what I'm hearing. Oh, he wanted to appear brave and strong in front of his dad? Could be. Let's keep reading. His father waved to him, telling him to join the group of riders behind the buffalo. The best horseman rode in the middle of the herd, guiding them to the buffalo jump, which was a steep cliff where most of the animals would fall to their death. Then the tribe would gather at the bottom of the canyon to collect all the dead bison to use for food, clothing, and tools. The buffalo ran harder and harder trying to escape from the hunters, but they didn't see the cliff right ahead. Spotted Tail watched the hunters pull back their horses and the bison race off the cliff. It was almost as if they could fly. Spotted Tail's people would now have the food they needed for the long winter. Spotted Tail hoped he would be allowed to join in the next buffalo hunt, proudly riding next to his father and his friends. This was the world that Spotted Tail knew. He was born in 1823 on the White River in South Dakota. His parents were both Lakota Indians. The Lakotas are also sometimes called the Sioux. There are 7 groups or bands of Lakota. They are like cousins. Spotted Tail lived with the band of Lakotas known as the Sichungu. The name comes from a scary event a long time ago when a large fire raged on the prairie, and the Sichungu people had to leap through the flames to escape. Most of the tribe burned their legs while running through the fire, and ever since then, they have been called the Sichungu, or Burn Thy People. Today, many Sichungu Lakota live on the Rosebud Indian Reservation in South Dakota. Spotted Tail's name in the Lakota language is Sente Gleshka. However, Spotted Tail's first name was actually Jumping Buffalo. One of the traditions of the Lakota people is that men and women are given different names throughout their lives. For example, a person can earn a new name if he or she performs a great act of bravery. A French trapper who had captured a raccoon to eat helped give Spotted Tail his name. The raccoon's tail had black rings around it, and Jumping Buffalo liked it. So the trapper gave it to him. Jumping Buffalo carried the raccoon's tail everywhere he went. Jumping Buffalo loved the tail so much that he was given the new name of Spotted Tail. In the early years, Spotted Tail grew up like other Native American boys. He learned how to hunt, how to play games, and how to show respect to his elders. There was no school for children in those days. Instead, Lakota boys and girls learned from their families and from older citizens in the community. The kids learned how to act and behave as a Lakota person. The children learned about the important Lakota virtues. The first of these was silence, which meant that a young child should not speak to his elders unless he had something important to say. Another important character trait was generosity. Lakota children were taught to reject the love of possessions, and so all people were encouraged to give away many of their belongings to those in need. So let's think about something for a minute. Since we've been at home and, spending a lot of time with our families and learning remotely, what are some things that you've learned from being home? Like, what's some things that you've learned, some family traditions maybe, some things about your culture? What are some things that you've learned that you didn't know before since now we've been home? Share with someone. Thank you for sharing. So I've just concluded the first section of the book, Early Life. And I'm going to just quickly skim, go past quickly the next section, which is the warrior section, so that I could read to you the section on family life. Spotted Tail married in 1841 and had 13 children. His favorite daughter was named Wheat Flour, and she had stayed with Spotted Tail at Fort Leavenworth while he was imprisoned there. Today, children would never stay with a parent in military jail, but the U.S. government allowed Wheat Flour to stay with her father. At Fort Leavenworth, the officers and their wives loved Wheat Flour, whom they called Monica. While there, Wheat Flour fell ill and died. She was just 16 years old. Wheat Flour's funeral wish had been to be buried near Fort Laramie, and the leader of that fort helped to give her a funeral in the Lakota tradition. Heartbroken, Spotted Tail grieved, but he knew that he had to put away his sadness and keep serving his people as their chief. Spotted Tail loved all of his children very much, and he wanted them to learn to speak English as well as study Lakota traditions. Captain Richard Henry Pratt asked Spotted Tail if his children could be educated at a new school for Native kids, the Carlisle Indian Industrial School, located in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. This school was supposed to be a new way to teach and educate Native American children. The students would be taken hundreds of miles away from their families and taught how to succeed in American society. Spotted Tail agreed to let 4 of his sons and 2 of his grandchildren travel all the way to Pennsylvania to attend the school. So think about that trip from South Dakota. Now we're heading west in South Dakota to Pennsylvania. Right, that was quite a trip. Very far away from their homes so that they can go to school. 1 year later, Spotted Tail traveled to Pennsylvania to visit his children at the school. When he got there, what he discovered about the education the Native children were receiving shocked and angered him. The kids were not being taught how to read and write in English, but were being trained in farm work and house cleaning. Even worse, the children were forbidden to speak their native language or practice their spirituality. He had trusted that the teachers at the new school would educate all the children in English, math, and other subjects. He argued with Captain Pratt about the way Native American children were being treated at the Carlisle school. Pratt refused to make any changes, so Spotted Tail took all of his family back with him to South Dakota. Unfortunately, the Carlisle Indian School remained open for a long time, and other schools sprang up throughout the U.S. and Canada. Many young Native children were forcibly taken from their families to these schools where they were not allowed to learn about their culture. Some of these children were badly mistreated. It wasn't until 1978 that American Indian parents were given the right to stop their children from being taken to these schools. What are your thoughts about that? What do you think about the children traveling so far with the expectation from the parents that they were going to have one experience, and then when the parents arrive, they have yet another experience? What do you think about that? Share with someone. It was unfair. Wasn't right. Yeah, that's similar to saying it was unfair. Okay. Thank you for sharing. So here's where our journey with Spotted Tail is going to stop for today. I want you to think about, what have you learned about Spotted Tail's life? What facts can you retell about Spotted Tail? And keep them in mind as we continue our journey in learning about Spotted Tail in the next video of the reading. So please join me tomorrow for our next reader, and my session will continue next week with part 2 of Spotted Tail. So we at NJLA, thank you so much for tuning in each day, and our goal is to continue to provide you with read alouds during this time of remote instruction. Thanks again to Benchmark Education and Raycraft Books for the books that we're sharing with you all, and I'll see you next time. So long.